fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, and we got Mr. Dave Martino back in the house.
I'm back.
You're back.
I'm back. Ready to rock.
Ready to rock. After all that, I saw you did more of those dancing videos.
Oh, the martial art.
Yeah.
Martial art videos. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty funny. Actually, you know what? You really surprised Joe. You know?
Did I?
Yeah, he didn't realize that you were into martial arts.
Oh, he didn't?
Yeah, the last shows, and he was like, oh my God. I better not make fun of him anymore.
That's right.
Make fun of a guy that can do karate and all that. Holy cow. That's like weird. I didn't know. It's like
jump on a plane and go get him.
That's right. I said, be careful. You have to watch your back. You know, keep your door locked.
Well, Michael's a martial artist too, so you know.
Yeah, I know. It's just all these people.
Be careful too.
All these karate. It's like, holy cow. I know the word judo.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's a good start.
That's a good start. No, exercise is walking the dog. That's about it. You know, if I don't fall over, I'm doing okay. Well, let's see. Now, today we've got a writer, and she's got a book out. The book is called Inland, and I want to welcome her to the show. Kate Risse, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Alan and Dave. Thanks for having me.
Wow. So where do we start? Let's begin with the premise of the book, and then we'll build from there. So what is the basic premise of Inland?
So the story is about a catastrophic sea level rise on the Eastern Seaboard that happens quickly, and there's lots of precipitation. A family is separated, and they are trying to find each other. They're trying to survive and adapt. And I probably should mention that there is a subplot which involves the iPhone. It has been recently banned in the world I've created because of a toxic component that makes people sick. So that's a sort of subplot to it. But mostly it's about the rising waters and people trying to find each other and trying to survive.
Well, you know, with that kind of a topic, so now the family, it's all fictional, right? It's not people you know.
It is fiction.
Yeah, it's all fictional. So with the rising water and the iPhone, it's kind of how do you say, it's kind of a disaster show.
Yeah.
What got you into writing this? That's the best way to ask it.
Yeah, I'm definitely grappling with two existential themes that I think a lot of people think about, and the perspective here is definitely a mom. There's also a dad in here because there are children involved in this story. And climate change is one of the existential themes, and the other one is social media and the phones and what they've done to us.
Certainly, both had major effects on everybody, you know, whether they're involved on social media or not. It still has an effect on a lot of people.
Yeah.
So how do you get into the characters' minds? Like, how did you create these characters, and what do you do to get their dialogue out?
Oh, yeah. Well, I probably should say that it is fiction, but this story starts on a small barrier island on the panhandle of Florida, the Gulf Coast in the north, what they call the Forgotten Coast. I spent a lot of time down there. I spent time there as a child as well. My mother and her family owned a little tiny beach house and went there. She went there as a child and then took us when we were younger. So I've been going there for a long time, and I go now a couple of times a year, and I drive there or I drive back from Boston, that is. So in the last several years, I really have seen a lot of weather being down there. I'm not a climate scientist, but I think some of the stuff is pretty alarming. I think any layperson would know from what they see that it's kind of extreme. And in 2018, as you may recall, Hurricane Michael slammed into the Florida Panhandle. I was not there for that. A reviewer recently said, like, I'd survived Hurricane Michael. That is definitely not the case. I was not there, but I did return after Michael a couple months later, and I did see the effects of that Category 5 hurricane, the largest and most powerful hurricane to hit this region of the Panhandle since they've been recording. And, houses and structures were there, one day, and then they were gone the next day. They were swept away. Places I'd stayed in, significant, sturdy structures, just entirely gone.
When you write the character's point of view of these things, how do you do that? Like what perspective? Like do you actually, let's put it this way, do you actually feel like you have a relationship with your main characters? Do you hear them, see them, feel them, or how do you write your characters?
Yes, I would say that the characters do kind of reflect people in my life, but they're really different. And one of the story is told from the point of view of two characters, and these chapters alternate. One of them is a mother who has two sons, and the other one is one of those sons who's 16. I really do feel like Billy, the narrator, is a real character sometimes. I really did get into him, and I feel like I sort of like inhabited him, and I feel particularly that way with the dialogue. And the dialogue was something I ended up working on and rewriting over and over and over again. So like writing a lot of dialogue and then just eliminating it, or eliminating 50% of it and adding, and then eliminating and adding. And I just really sort of crafted his dialogue. And I really did feel like, I was sort of a puppeteer or something, but even more than that, like really just getting into his headspace, especially since, he's an adolescent, he's 16, he's growing up in a world where things are happening that weren't happening when I was young. We didn't have social media, and we didn't really know about the climate when I was 16, or we did, and maybe we weren't informed. Some people did, and we weren't, the general public wasn't informed as young people are now. So I had to just really try to imagine a 16-year-old in a world like that, because I'm not 16 anymore,
No?
Well, how did you handle the dialogue for your characters? Do you have an inner monologue? Did you have to speak it out? Did you pull from what you've read, or maybe dialogue from film? How did you approach creating the dialogue?
Maybe a little bit with film and with other stories. I do teach, I teach in a university, and I do teach short stories and novels, and I am thinking of one in particular that is from a 15-year-old's point of view, and maybe that kind of creeped into influenced me in some way, although probably minimally. I did open my ears and listen, because I do have children who are now more like young adults, but, they were 15, 16 at a certain time. And also teaching in a university, some of my students are 18. That's only 2 years older than 16. So I definitely think I kept my ears open, and I observed the young people in my vicinity, whether it was the university or in my own home. And at a certain point, I consulted my kids about a couple of different things about, the world of young people.
Yeah, you kind of have to do that, because, they're, the way they speak and what they find funny is sometimes different.
Oh, man, it is so true. Their whole dialogue and what they say in a formal setting versus when they're with, 5 or 6 of their friends on a Friday night. So it can be really different.
Totally. Well, I think we find different things important at that age, and it goes by what's around us and what we have access to. You know what I mean? So, there's always the rebel of not liking old people.
Yeah, that's true.
But there's, and social media, like that's a tough one to take on, because I don't think we really know exactly how it's going to affect the younger generations as it goes. Do you know what I mean? Like we kind of have a good indication of what's happened, but I don't think we really know. And how do you cover that sort of thing with the iPhone and having it banned in your world and stuff like that? And what kind of direction do you take on that?
I really didn't want to be preachy, so I was really conscious of not trying to be preachy about it. The mother has a dialogue with her own mother. when this, catastrophe is about to take place with the water rising. And I think that's the one part in my book where there is a little bit of preachiness. The mother and the grandmother have this dialogue because, of course, the mother is from a generation that did not have the iPhone, but the grandmother is really from a different generation and has a very hard time understanding it and watching her grandchildren, and says something like, this is going to be your children's trauma. Other generations have had wars and dust bowls and other catastrophes, and this is going to be your kids' trauma. But at the same time, I was really aware of wanting to bring it up, bring up the issue of the iPhone and social media and the effect that it might have, but not in a scientific way. Again, I'm not a child psychiatrist. I really don't know. I wanted to do it in a more kind of organic way, just having it come up in dialogue with the kids and the parents as it might in a more natural way, rather than like a preachy social scientist kind of way. I do want to say that recently the Surgeon General in the United States has said that we need to clamp down, and just as we've done with cigarettes, we need to put something on the side of social media that says, this could be harmful, and it probably is. That's why Surgeon Generals put signs like that on the side of cigarettes, because they believe that they are harmful. And so that is something that's recently come up in the U.S. I think there's some ambiguity because the phone also helps. Like, let's not forget, you can look things up. You can map yourself home. Although, pointedly, at the end of the story, the phone has not really done what it promises to do. And I think that is one of the points I'm making, that, yeah, they are great. Phones are really good, right? They're good, they're bad. It's not black and white, right? It's complicated. Yeah.
I think we have to learn how to use it. And I think people are getting better at it now. I think people are starting to focus more on better things. At least I hope so. And less on a lot of the bad stuff. Because there's a lot of good you get out of the internet and social media and stuff like that. There can be.
For sure.
Well, do the young people in the book have they have withdrawals from not being able to use their iPhone, social media?
Yes. The kids tell stories about. There's a scene where the main character, Billy, the 16-year-old boy, is alone in this house. It's collapsing. It's literally sinking into the rising seas in Boston. And then he's joined by some other kids in the neighborhood, and they sit around and talk about the iPhone, and they talk about how some of their friends who had to hand the phone over, there was a rebate in cities and towns where people could hand their phone in and they could get a flip phone. Flip phones are fine. They don't have this metal component that causes illness. But they do talk about the kids the kids having withdrawal. Some of the kids freaked out. There's a story about, one of the kids ran off into the mountains of Vermont with a backpack and marshmallows, and his mother had to run around looking for him because he was so flipped out that he didn't have a phone and that kind of thing.
He was flipped out because he had to have a flip phone.
Which begs the question, what's next?
Yeah, well, personally, and from what I hear, I believe AI will take over a lot of the social media. I think people will get, you got to think everything we have right now in 20 years will all be in the garbage. Mm-hmm. Just like 20 years ago, everything that we were doing then is all gone now. It's all very primitive. Except for Dave. He's still got VHS.
Oh, I do. DVD, Blu-ray.
Yes. So, but most people will change. So what do you hope people take away from the book then? What do you, when someone picks up Inland, takes it home and reads it, is there a subtext, or is there pure entertainment here? Like, where do you see this going?
That is the $1 million question. And, I've been reading a lot of climate fiction lately, and I've been, sort of focusing on the books that are a little bit less dystopic and the ones that kind of, give a hopeful scenario at the end. Not a happy ending, but like maybe we can figure it out. Maybe we can adapt. Maybe we can change. So that is the $1 million question. Is this kind of stuff just entertainment, or does it encourage people to think a little bit more about where are we going with what we're doing? We are going to need to make some changes. I think a lot of people know that. I don't want to say most people, but like a lot of people know that. We can't just continue as we are, And I think communities are trying to adapt. They're trying to use more electricity rather than, fossil fuels. So I would hope that people think a little bit about that, for sure. Still thinking about that question. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a touchy topic because when you bring into these topics into your books, you start to get distributed pretty massively. You'll start getting backlash from people that will assume you are a far leftist, whatever. They'll have some idea. Do you know what I mean? And so you do have to be aware, because whenever you pick subjects like this, not so much, I don't think so much the social media or phone, but more the climate change will be the subject that you will get the negative view on, probably.
Yeah, I think that's true. But again, some of the books I'm reading, they're about wildfires spreading rapidly. And, my daughter's boyfriend is out in Oregon right now fighting fires. And I see photos of him, on his 17-day roll in California or in Oregon. Like, he's really fighting these fires, and there have always been wildfires, but the science says not like this. And also just, the rise in water and there's other climate fiction books about lack of water, or I just picked up one the other day it's a really good novel about hurricanes kind of gone berserk in Florida. We're having some hurricane issues, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. I do find it, and also the heat, the famous, the book that people seem to keep talking about is Kim Stanley Robinson's recent book, The Ministry for the Future. And it does have that horrible beginning of a heat wave in India, right? A heat wave that the human body cannot withstand. And it's in detail. He describes what happens to the human body when this kind of heat happens. And, I think it was 128 outside of, in some of the cities this summer in India.
Oh, yeah.
That's really close. Like 127?
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah. India can get hot.
Yeah.
Boy.
So I don't know. I guess what are the people who are denying it? Some of them must be experiencing some of this stuff. So I guess they have other ideas. They say it's cyclical, or they say God's will, or whatever. Yeah.
Again, it comes to emotions, and when people really feel something, it becomes much stronger than thinking out things. So you can take things like, say, well, it's cyclical. It's happened before. It's just happening again. It's easier to be in that kind of denial, let's say, than rather face something that's threatening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's simpler. And that's in all aspects, not just in climate or temperatures. There's all sorts of things that people will do that for. Maybe it's part of human nature in a sense. I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor. I just play one on the radio. But well, that's really, really interesting. Now, are you planning to go further with this, with your characters in this series? Or are you going to do a series with this, or what's your intentions here?
Yeah, at the end, there's possibly a little bit of unfinished business. So maybe I will write a sequel, possibly. Yeah, I've thought about that, or I've been thinking about that.
So what did you find the hardest thing? Now, this is your first book you've ever published, is that correct? Or have you done
Yeah, this is my first novel.
So what was the biggest challenge for you in the whole big picture of this writing?
In the actual writing of it?
Yeah, right from the beginning to end, from when you decide to write, when you sit down and you start writing, and then you find a publisher and then an editor and now promotion and stuff. What do you think of the whole thing? No swear words.
Yeah, the writing actually came pretty easily to me. I did write a dissertation, and I did it by getting up at 4 a.m. So I kind of repeated that. I am an early riser. So the writing of it was okay. And I also have a really wonderful writing group I've had for like literally decades. And they help me a lot. I think the publishing, finding a publisher, finding an agent, that kind of thing is really challenging in this day and age. But I was lucky. I found a good bunch of people, and they really helped me with the book, and they helped me edit it. So I would say that component, rather than something like the actual putting pen to the paper and getting something out, that wasn't so terribly hard. I am a believer in for me in particular, like of editing and rewriting and cutting and reading it again. And, like I have a staff that must be like 4 feet high of all of the different versions of this. But I don't know if I'd call that challenging, because I think I knew that was just part of the process. It was more like when I was finished, what do I do now? And I'm also not in I'm an academic, like I teach in a university. I'm not in one of those kind of writing communities where people seem to know each other and they all go to these, writing book festivals and things like that. I wasn't immersed in that, although I do have a writing group. And I do know people, and sometimes I do go to writing stuff, but not in the way that some, quote unquote, like professional writers are. So that as well was a little challenging.
And it's not that big a deal anyway. I mean, it's pretty, some people really get into all that, do all the different shows and all the events and all that. It's a lot of work.
It is. I agree. It's a lot of work. And you have to be that kind of personality where you get out and schmooze and stuff like that. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's really awful, actually.
Thank you for saying that.
Well, it is. I'll tell you that right now. It's one a year is max for me. And so, but I know other co-hosts, like Joe will go to 2, 3, and then John goes to about 20. Some people just love it and they get into it and it really works for them. It's their way of working in a way, because you do have to market. You have to get your name out there. Because if you're not, someone real famous, Matthew McConaughey or something like that writes a book and then you sell 1 million copies. If you're not that, you have to get out there and get around. And that's one way of doing it. And sometimes they like it better than talking to people like me. Just saying. I don't know why. I don't have. Well, that's fantastic. So listen, have you set up, or do you have a website? Do you have social media? Do you have any of that stuff that people can find you at, and maybe readers, and they can interact with you, or have you done that yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a website. It's Kate Risse, KateRisse.com. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. And I welcome any contact or questions or comments or anything like that. Goodreads. I'm also on Goodreads. Yeah.
Well, okay. We'll put all that up on the website, of course, so people can find you in that. But you got to get on TikTok and start dancing.
No can do, Dave.
Oh,
and Al, no can do.
You get out there and have some fun. Get out there and talk about how social media is terrible. And then you dance, and then no, I guess that wouldn't work.
Yep, but, that is
that's kind of that's drawing the line. That's one step too much. Well, we appreciate talking about the book, and we'll have everything up, the book and everything. And the book is called Inland, and the author has been with us, Kate Risse. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kate.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.